Don Doroteo Hernández Vera, a man of God for others, priest and founder of the Secular Institute Evangelical Crusade.
Don Doroteo founded the Secular Institute Evangelical Crusade, which wants to be faithful to his spirituality and charisma, doing the ordinary, the everyday, extraordinarily well done. Everyone remembers him as a saint. In the crypt of Coslada, where his remains rest, many people visit him and entrust themselves to him.
He was buried in a small village in Soria.
Who would have thought what God would do to this child, son of Santiago and Juana, who was born in Matut de Almazan, a small village in Soria, on the 28th of March, 1901, in a simple little house very close to the parish church, where he would be baptized the following day. He went to Mass every day accompanying his mother, and soon became an altar boy. He often prayed before the tabernacle. He also went to the hermitage to pray to the Virgen de la Carrera. On the 3rd of May of 1905, Doroteo expressed his vocation to the priesthood for the first time. When faced with a moment of difficulty in which Mrs. Juanita found herself, he said to her, "Mother, don't hurry."
Mother, don't hurry. When I grow up, I will be a priest, and I will always be with you.
In 1911, a year later, he received his first communion. One of the things that Doroteo did on that memorable day was to go and help at a priest's mass. He tells his daughters, who wept with emotion.
A shy boy entered this seminary and a priest came out.
One night, when he was 12 years old, the boy Doroteo said to his parents,
Tomorrow I'm going to the seminary.
Doroteo's decision was discussed with his family, and with 2 silver coins they were able to make half the journey. The other half they walked. But, as he will say later, he doesn't remember getting tired. Finally, they arrived in Sigüenza, but not everything was done. Will he be admitted to the seminary? How would he cope with his studies? He knew that the best thing he could do was to put him in his mother's hands. And with that, he offered his only 10 cents to the Virgen de la Mayor, patron saint of Sigüenza. In 1915, he entered the diocesan seminary. He was admitted to the diocesan seminary in 1915 and was admitted to one of the posts of famulus, servant of the community in which he lived, always keeping his sisters in mind, to whom he brought his daily snack. Even so, after sweeping corridors and washing dishes, she still managed to find time for play and rest, without, of course, neglecting his studies. No wonder, when asked in his old age, "Father, if you ask us what he was like," he answered sincerely,
That he was a person who tried at every moment to do what he had to do.
In 117, he had the first idea of founding something. He finds a little leaf that says, "God wills it." He did not hesitate to go to his superiors, and an atmosphere of missionary desire was created. He calls it the Apostles of God. He calls them the Apostles of Guinea. Doroteo began to study music and singing exercises. He had neither a good ear nor an instrument other than a tuning fork. He had a great devotion to the founder of the Sons of the Heart of Mary, Father Anthony Mary Claret, one of his most beloved works, the nuns in his houses. He listens to the story in passing while serving lunch to his teachers and classmates. The idea strikes him. In 1923, he obtained the post of psalmist by competitive examination in the Cathedral of Sigüenza, with which he supported his household finances while he studied his last year of theology. 1926. was to be the year of his ordination to the priesthood. But he had one last test before his ordination. With the date already in sight, on the 7th of February, his mother died in Siguenza, thus depriving them of the day they had both been looking forward to together. The day arrived, that 20th of March, for which he had prepared so intensely, on his way to take orders in the parish church of La Magdalena in Tarazona. He realized that he was going to the ceremony in slippers. For him, the exterior was of secondary importance.
If he was born again, he would become a priest again.
On the 26th of March, he celebrates his first Mass in the Collegiate Church of Soria.
There was a great deal of joy.
During a retreat in Burgo de Osma, in 1929, he took the Bible he had at his bedside and read, "Behold, the harvest is now fit for the blind, but there is no one to reap it. The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few." This sentence, which changed his life definitively, there was a phrase which changed his life forever and which rang insistently in his priestly heart. Between 1932 and 1967, he was a religious collaborator of the newspaper El País. He was a religious collaborator of the newspaper El Diario Montañés, where he wrote weekly reflections on the gospel.
Prisoner for Christ.
In the summer of 1936, civil war broke out. Don Doroteo, thinking of the possibility of being arrested in those difficult days, made the following card.
Juan Antonio Perez Hidalgo, expert electrician. Soria!
But he was arrested in his own home on the 14th of April 1937. They pointed a pistol at him and shouted,
Give yourself up. That's what I'm going up.
On arrival, they took him to an unlit cellar where he was kept mixed with other criminals. The commissioner asked him what his name was and what his profession was. Don Doroteo replied,
He was a priest. And what are his political ideas, priest?
He was slapped and answered, remembering Christ.
You honor me too much because Jesus Christ was also slapped.
After a long interrogation, the commissioner concluded,
This guy's either a cynic, or he's a dungeon crawler, or he's crazy.
Don Doroteo has been in prison for more than 4 months. The idea of doing something about the many needs, in the face of the many needs he finds around him. In prison, he prays matins and lauds, meditating in the midst of the noise. One day he manages to celebrate Mass. He even took the risk of bringing communion to some prisoners. He took the opportunity to study French. He was also taken to work on the Corban Road, on the road to the cemetery in Santander. On leaving prison, he felt that his missionary desires had grown stronger. And so he tells Bishop Don Jose Eguino Itrecu, who asked him to wait at least a year. Don Doroteo obediently accepted his bishop's decision.
Return to the prisons.
On the 16th of November, at around midnight, 2 young men who were on their way to see the priest to communicate with him spiritually went to see him. That night, Lupe, our former jailer, was shot. He rushed to the prison, which he found it difficult to enter. He changes his behavior. He kisses the crucifix. He goes to confession. He receives Holy Viaticum. He had accompanied his jailer the last night of his life.
A soul cannot be converted in 3 hours.
Something had to be done. And in these circumstances, still not recovered from his stay in prison, the bishop asked Don Doroteo to devote himself to prison chaplaincy. He replied with a
I can't.
no. He saw that at that very moment his strength would not allow him to carry out this mission. But after a sleepless night, early the next morning, he was back in front of Monsignor Egino Itrecu to tell him.
Count on me.
He even managed to save some lives through his intercession. No wonder Don Doroteo's heart is aging prematurely.
Can I count on you for a work of God's glory?
The 2nd of December of 1937 is an unforgettable day, when the priest said in the confessional to the one who would be the first crusader,
I need you to do a work for the glory of God.
I was waiting for you, she answered promptly. On the 8th of December, the celebration of a First Communion was the setting for the beginning of the institution, of which only Don Doroteo and the first 5 crusaders were aware. It went unnoticed in the eyes of those present. On the morning of the 11th of January of 1938, Don Doroteo presented his plans for the work he was beginning to the bishop.
What do I do? Do I encourage the idea or stifle it?
The bishop replied,
It is providential. I was worried about this very matter. Tell them that their vocation is one of sacrifice.
After a while, the work begins to have a name. Evangelical Crusade.
Crusade of cross, which speaks to us of love and sacrifice. Evangelical, for the gospel must be their way of life, in order to proclaim it to others.
On the 16th of February of 1941, a terrible fire devastated a third of the city of Santander. Don Doroteo lost his house and 9 crusades plus his own. And the institute also lost its headquarters.
What do we do?
Asked the founder. We are the work. And they continued their lives and their apostolates as if nothing had happened. 2 days later, when his house had not yet burned down, he left for Madrid by train to discuss the founding of the Merced Hostel, to take in women who had nowhere to go when they left prison. He traveled once a month from Santander to the Spanish capital to visit the new work, and to look after the crusaders and the young women who live in the hostel. He makes the journey in the evenings to miss as little as possible the cathedral choir. When Don Doroteo was in Valdesilla Hospital for a minor operation, he took the opportunity to design the altar of the cathedral. He took the opportunity to design the altar of the house, write the offering of works, the examination of the night, and write the day of the crusade.
Don Doroteo, this does not appear in the code.
But what the founder wanted for the institution was not in the code, as Don Francisco Pajares said, who insisted that if he wanted the crusades to take vows, he should found a congregation. On the 2nd of February of 1947, Pope Pius X promulgated the Apostolic Constitution, Provida Mater Ecclesia, when Don Doroteo Bell, the incumbent, stands to read it under a lamppost.
I am not mad.
The thought of the work has been of God.
Missionary in his homeland and beyond.
On the 1st of December 1949, he was appointed beneficiary of grace of the Cathedral of Santander. And also at the beginning of the year 1950, he was appointed by his bishop to the post of ecclesiastical advisor to the trade union organization. He was enthusiastic about apostolic work with the workers. During the 14 years of his pastoral assignment, he succeeded in becoming a good priest for everyone. The following year, he was appointed professor of sociology at the Diocesan Seminary of Monte Corban in Santander. At that time, there were no sociology faculties. He accepted the appointment because he considered it important that priests should know the world and that the social doctrine of the Church should help them to transform it. His spiritual life was remarkable. His last lesson was,
May you do much good and make little noise.
on the 8th of December 1957, the official image of the patron saint of the Institute was blessed, the Immaculate Virgin, designed by the Father. In November 1959, a letter was received from Rome from the Pontifical Commission for Latin America. Many crusaders promptly volunteered to go to mission countries. Father appointed the first missionaries. Don Doroteo retires from his position in the trade union organization in March 1900. In March 1963, he also retired from his position in the Cathedral of Santander in the month of October of 1964. This made it possible for him to make his first trip to Bolivia on 11th of October, accompanied by 2 missionaries. There he inaugurated various centers where the Crusades were present. After 13 months, 6 of them as missionary parish priest in Portachuelo, he returned to Spain on the 17th of November 1975. The newly appointed Director General of Prisons was looking for a senior chaplain and thinks,
No one will do it better than Don Doroteo, for he is the expert hand that directs the extraordinary work being done in prisons by the Evangelical Crusade, which he founded.
The Father considers that there is no reason to believe that a former criminal will remain a criminal forever. During his time in prison, he was able to see that there was more ignorance than evil. He is concerned as chaplain of the day after about what happens when they leave prison. On reaching the age of 70, the time comes to leave the task entrusted to him.
It is a great satisfaction. Always try to make the most of the years, the days, the seconds, for what they are meant to be. The seconds, for what they are meant to be. Never give ourselves a pleasure, a satisfaction. Always to do before God what we ought to do.
The minister's undersecretary says, Let's get together.
Some more time around this bull ring, which is the heart of Don Doroteo.
In 1975 years, he made his first trip to the African continent to visit the missions that the Crusades had started in the Congo in the year 1967. His second missionary journey to Bolivia took place in 1997. The members of the Institute received from the Bolivian government, in recognition of the work they had done, the Condor of the Andes in its highest degree.
As a grain of wheat.
The disease, which had been latent for years, manifested itself seriously in the year 1979. He came to fear for his life. His recovery made it possible for him to fulfill his dream of visiting Lima on what was to be his last missionary journey. At the age of 80, the founder takes stock of his life. The founder took stock of his life.
If you want to take the secular Institute Evangelical Crusade out of my life is reduced to nothing. My life is reduced to nothing. A few voices in the cathedrals, a few sermons. If you want 1 million sermons, talks, and other acts, and another 1 million or so confessions heard. It is not exactly a totally useless life, but it is not a full life. My life is filled by my activities as founder of the Institute. I reach my 80s having achieved a goal. I have created the Institute, obtained the definitive approval. The constitutions approved, spread to Spain, to Bolivia, to Peru, to Zaire.
The end was marked by a long illness, which progressively deprived him of communication. Paralysis no longer allowed him to move. But on the night of the 31st October, to the admiration of the Crusaders who accompanied him, he raised his right arm and gave them his last blessing. On the 6th of November, Don Doroteo opened his eyes, looked at the picture of the Virgin placed in front of his bed, and went to his father's house.
Way to the altars.
We have had the good fortune to know and live with a holy priest.
This opinion was often heard in reference to Don Doroteo. On many sides, the idea of initiating the cause of canonization of the founder was encouraged.
And it is from the church and from all the places where he exercised his apostolate, Spain, America, that his scent spread within the ecclesial framework.
The cause is moving forward, and it is necessary to entrust ourselves to the servant of God and thus obtain the miracle necessary for his beatification.